How can you perform consistently every single day, even if you're just not feeling it? What I've learned is writing something is better than not writing at all. I can always go back and change it when I'm in a good writing vibe again. But yeah, sometimes it just takes an accountability partner or some type of consistency. But when I look back on it, on even on the days where I sucked, I feel really proud of just doing it. So I've written 30 minutes a day for 51 days now. Since I've started this challenge, there's probably been a good like 7, 8 days where I just did not feel like writing. And trust me, like the challenge sometimes was real. There was a few times where I was sick. There was times where I was just like, I just either didn't feel inspired or I was just busy dealing with life. Each of you who are showing up here, you guys are helping me be accountable and me be consistent in this experience. And just thank you for that. Can't find my own style. And I have so many thoughts in the back of my mind telling me my book has no feel to it. How do I handle that? First off, congratulate yourself. Congratulate yourself and appreciate yourself that you were able to write a book in the first place. If this first draft feels like you feel like there has no style in it, rough drafts when we get through the end of the first complete draft of a book, there's going to be a lot of problems with it. There's generally going to be a lot of like character issues. There might be problems with the plot. A lot of grammar might sound off. The structure could be poor. And that's actually really common on your rough draft. The goal of a rough draft is to get the story out, get as many ideas out there as you possibly can. Once you're done with the rough draft, then that's when you actually can go back through it on the second draft and you actually get to refine all of the things like the plot, the characters, the dialogue, and you get to refine it and make it sound either more believable or more in the direction that you want to go. Do you have some type of expectation on how it should be? I'm of the belief personally that every writer out there has style. And that specifically, if I were to categorize what is style, style is the combination of how we define our character development, how we define dialogue, how we define world building, how we use structure, and how we do plot or narrative. Have any ways of dealing with writer's block? I've been kind of experiencing that I've been journaling, which is good, but I don't feel like being creative. Think about what's the motivation behind your writing and what's the passion behind it. Step 2, ask yourself what your goal is. Writer's block is partly a mental thing and it's partly an emotional thing. My suggestion is break through whatever the emotional barrier is. We write when we're passionate about something. We act when we feel extreme emotions. We act when we feel love, hate, emotions that are very strong. So if you can tether yourself and remind yourself what is the reason that you're passionate and what is that reason, then it will make it one step easier for you when you sit down to write. That I wasn't sure if I should change the name of the town in the book. I already changed the names of the actual people, but mentioning the town I live in is probably a bad idea. When you write stories based on like real life, real things that happened, I think the question that you always have to ask yourself is, if this story comes out, let's say it becomes a bestseller and it gets published and people read it, how will it make the people involved or the people around you feel, right? And if your answer is like, no, nobody cares, leave it like that. If your answer is, oh, people care, my loved one might care because of XYZ, is if you're keeping the name, the original name of the town, character, whatever, why? Why does it have to be that name? Why does it have to be that town? I think I've always been comfortable within my own creativity. And then if whether or not people like it or they don't like it, of course I care, but I don't care enough that it affects my self-esteem. I'm really about whatever you're working on, like you should be having fun with it. Like have fun, enjoy the story process. And if you're enjoying what you're creating, which that's the coolest part. It's the coolest, greatest part of story development. You're going to be comfortable with your writing because you're having fun with it. Now, if your goal is to become a published author and to be able to publish your work or option a screenplay or a script, then of course you have to take other people's recommendations into consideration, but you want to use those recommendations. You want to use editor's advice. You want to use it as feedback to layer on top of your script or your story, but don't let that feedback affect your self-esteem and the way that you view your story. I would say in addition to that, probably just consistency over the years has helped me out a little bit as well. I also went to school for creative writing because I knew that's what I was passionate about. There's definitely been years, there's been times where I've been working on stories and they don't I like write a story, I come up with an idea, I write the things, and I'm like, wow, this sucks. But you know what? It's all right. There's so many there's so many times I've written stories and I'm like, yeah, the story's kind of garbage. But you know, I just set it aside. I'll come back to it if it's something I'm actually interested about. I'm never 100% comfortable with my writing. I've I started writing when I was probably about 8 years old because my parents got me this create your own story set, and I was a fan of Super Mario Brothers, so I wrote a 20-part Super Mario series. It was like 2 to 3 sentences per page and stick figures. A bit lazy or not inspired on a given day. Even if you can just sit down to work, how can you make sure that your performance and quality will always be top? Well, I don't think your performance and quality always will be on top. And I think, like, if you're trying to write every day, like, I think that all that might be unrealistic, right? I think the goal shouldn't be always be writing your best. I think the goal is just to write because writing, even if you write for 5 minutes, is better than writing for 0 minutes. If you miss out on the opportunities to write consistently, you might miss out on a session where like it was a great session. Or let's say you write something bad, but how do you know that that thing that was like a hot pile of garbage, that when you go back and you re-edit it like next week, that you don't find something really cool and something creative out of it? The more you do it, the more you get better at it. Feel if you're trying to get inspired, I always like to say, like, think of like your favorite hobby, think of like a movie, TV show, book, think of something that like emotionally you love. And then think about like that's the emotion that you're trying to create for yourself essentially in that moment of inspiration. Find something that inspires you and then just make it easy. Make it as easy as possible. Are you working on any book right now? You know what? I'm glad you asked because we're about to hop into our second writing sprint. So let me hop back in here and let me throw this up. So this is actually the story that I'm working on right now, Caiaphas, where it's called The Last Scarecrow. Now, here's the synopsis if you want to get a sense of what the story is about. Let's see. Let's want to make sure you can see it. There we go. So that's the story that I'm working on. It's probably I don't think I've heard a story that's a kind of a cross between a post-apocalypse type novel and a dark fairy tale. It's finding its footing. I would say right now I'm at what? I'm at about 33,000 words. It's probably somewhere between 100 to 150 pages when it's not in the Comic Sans font. But yeah, I would say this is the story that I'm working on now. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's right now my heroes, the scarecrow, a crow, and a pixie are traveling through the land as they're journeying to go find the graveyard of the last, which was told to them by the last robot that they needed to find something there that would be strong enough to counteract the first demon's magic.